Good morning and happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show planned for you all today. Team Rising weighs in on Manchin's hesitation to the reconciliation bill and how House progressives are responding. Plus, New York Assembly member Zohran Mamdani discusses the Taxi Workers Alliance hunger strike he's been taking part in for more relief for drivers' debts. And of course, Kim Iverson will join us later this morning as well.
But first, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has COVID. Over the weekend, she released a statement saying she tested positive on Sunday after members of her family tested positive earlier in the week, saying, quote, "Thanks to the vaccine, I've only experienced mild symptoms, which has enabled me to continue working from home," end quote. She went on to say she'd be back after a 10-day quarantine and negative test. And so, so later in the show, we're going to talk about the reconciliation package. Joe Manchin, yesterday came out and demanded that the CPC, the progressives, cave and just pass the infrastructure bill. Minutes later, they were like, okay, we'll cave, pass the infrastructure bill. So bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah, that would be interesting. The only other thing I wanted to say on the Psaki news, at some point it's going to have to stop being news. I guess when a senior government official gets it, but whenever eventually it's going to have to be that, oh, someone got COVID. It is just like getting the flu for a lot of people if you've had the vaccine. So we're going to have to move on from another breakthrough case kind of, panic twinge that everyone feels and that the media covers.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I hope that day is soon. Now we'd like to turn our attention to the Virginia gubernatorial race, which I'll also be discussing later in my radar. Stay tuned for that. Sabado's Crystal Ball has published its last ratings, which are leaning Republican. They previously leaned Democrat. They note that while it may provide insight into midterms, it doesn't always predict the future. Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin held a rally last night where President Trump made a brief cameo via phone call, telling voters that Youngkin is a fantastic guy who will do a job like nobody can do. He went on to say that today's election is a chance to send a message to Democrats ahead of midterms and blasted McAuliffe as, quote, very shady, unsuccessful governor who has gotten worse and made a corrupt bargain with the radical left.
He's kind of shady.
He is kind of shady. It's a resonating message. If you're calling political figures shady, you're rarely going to be wrong. Anyway,
yes, this is true. So we also have major elections in Buffalo and in Boston. Mm-hmm. So Boston mayoral race, Michelle Wu would be one of the most would be the most progressive mayor that Boston will ever have elected if she's able to pull that one off. And in Buffalo, India Walton won the Democratic primary for mayor, beat the incumbent Mayor Brown. Mayor Brown decided that he was not going to go quietly and is now running as a write-in candidate with the very clever slogan, "Write Down Brown," which, if Lisa Murkowski can win a write-in campaign in Alaska, that means something as simple as "Write Down Brown." It certainly has a shot in Buffalo. Covering that for a long time has been Jordan Chariton. He's been in Buffalo for several weeks now. Jordan is joining us now to talk about the race. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And so you put up an interesting report the other day where you were driving, around Buffalo and comparing, the socioeconomic divisions in the city, and spotlighting how in the wealthier parts of Buffalo you had a ton of "Write Down Brown" signs, and in the poorer parts of the city, if you had signs, you had India Walton signs, but you had fewer signs, which reflects less engagement with politics. And so, what are you seeing? What have you been seeing the last couple of weeks as you've been in Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to other cities. Gentrification's not a sexy term discussed in the media, but for the economic renaissance that the current mayor likes to talk about, there's been many neighborhoods left behind, particularly the east side of Buffalo, which is where India Walton was born and raised. And basically you have kind of a fractured city where certain sections have been developed over the last 16 years with the current mayor. Investment coming in, a lot of real estate development, particularly in downtown and by the waterfront. So bars, restaurants, breweries, but then and a lot of contracts being handed out to those developers, basically handing them the land and giving them money. But on the other side, all that development has left whole swaths of the city, I mean, just completely barren. You have a sea of vacant lots on the east side where homes used to be, sewer systems, decrepit. You have transportation systems not working, youth centers that have shut down. So it really is, the Walton campaign is really running on that tale of two cities, where the Brown campaign is basically doing the usual, socialism, defund the police, and hammering her with that. So we'll see what happens. I mean, even though she won the primary, it would be an upset if she defeats him in the general. Polling has showed he is up, but usually when there's an upset, that doesn't show up in polls before the election.
Yeah, Buffalo is the third poorest city in the U.S. with child poverty at 43%. But we also saw some nicer areas within the community as well. We have a clip of your interview with India Walton where she addresses how people in the community feel about the disparity. Let's watch that.
One could argue that the renaissance that has benefited the elite and the wealthy of this community is enough. And, we just need more time for it to trickle down. But when you talk to people who are working every day, when you talk to people who are still struggling to make ends meet, when you speak to folks who've had their small businesses shutter as a result of the pandemic, they're not feeling like they're enjoying in that renaissance. What are we doing for the little guy who tends to be the majority of us in Buffalo? Buffalo is, like you said, the third poorest city of its size in the nation.
Yeah, and so Brown is attracting Republican support as well. As that's the sort of right. Obviously, if you have a Democrat who's also appealing to Republicans, that poses we've seen that kind of dynamic play out before with Murkowski, et cetera. It makes it probably a really uphill battle.
Yeah, I mean, the primary also, India Walton won, but essentially Byron Brown just sleptwalked through it. He didn't even campaign. So you're basically seeing in the general a lot of Brown's base that did not come out in the primary because they just assumed he would easily glide to victory. The polls show an increase in interest and turnout among Brown voters. You also have Brown. He has not even subtly sent out the bat signal for Republican support. You have Carl Palladino, who's one of these crazy Trump guys. Infamously, wished for President Obama and Michelle Obama to die and got crap for that years ago. He's poured in $10,000 for Byron Brown. Republican real estate developers have poured in $10,000, thousands of dollars for Byron Brown. So in these local elections, it's really going to come down to turnout. Obviously, Byron Brown is a name brand, even though he's writing down a write-down candidate. He's a name brand. Everybody knows him. But I have seen being here, even among those that aren't totally sold on India Walton, kind of a incumbent fatigue, 16 years with Byron Brown and thinking it's time for a change. So to me, it's really a coin toss. Byron Brown should be the favorite. He's the incumbent. But I have not seen, and I'm not from here, from people I talk to, they have not seen this level of political engagement and enthusiasm for any race in a very long time. So that would bode well for India Walton.
It seems to me like India Walton has shifted her rhetoric a little bit since the primary. She would occasionally talk about police abolition or more down the line kind of defund type of rhetoric, whereas now in the general election. She's been stressing, no, don't worry. It's not that we're going to fire the police force. We're just going to redirect some money here, and we're going to make sure that policing is done in a more effective, humane, and efficient manner. How is that shift playing out in Buffalo? And is Brown making ground with his kind of socialism defund attacks?
Yeah, so India Walton actually told me in our interview that, in terms of online left and being pure, like she doesn't have the privilege or the She doesn't have the benefit of being 100% pure. She has to win. And Buffalo, it's a blue city, but it's not like excessively progressive. It's kind of working class blue collar, and people do kind of get a little sticker shock or triggered by socialism and defund. So she definitely has tempered her language. She's talking more about reallocating funds in the police department, not laying off police officers. She talks about a modest tax increase to help social services rather than tax the rich, this and that. So she definitely has tempered her language, which I think, frankly, you have to do. Progressives can't run national style messaging in local elections where the predominant voter is 65 and older, and it's you have to reach those in-between voters who might be with you on policies, but you have to kind of talk their language so you don't scare them away. I also think Byron Brown, he has been successful. Crime is a big issue here. And in the polls, crime is one of the top issues for voters. So he has been, on radio ads, local TV, he just keeps saying defund the police, defund the police. And it remains to be seen, because you're right, during the George Floyd protests, she was kind of hugging that defund the police, but she has kind of tweaked it now. So if Byron Brown wins, it would not surprise me if, in exit polls and things like that, people, gravitated to that she was going to defund the police or these things. But she has, credit to her, definitely tweaked her message to be like, what are you so scared of? I just want to, fix the potholes and, have more money for social services and things like that.
And I'm curious for your take. Do you think there's sort of a catch-22 for the left here, in the sense that the rhetoric and around defund and around that last summer is what helped propel her to winning the primary? And so, with the more cautious approach, maybe she doesn't even win the primary, but the rhetoric that you need to win the primary then makes it difficult for you in the contest with Brown in the general election. How do you square that circle?
Well, I think it's also a very unusual situation, because typically, if a progressive upsets in the primary, somebody like Joe Crowley would kind of go gracefully into the night as a lobbyist. Here, you have the incumbent mayor who just wouldn't accept the results. So I don't know if it could be, extrapolated beyond, because, he just wouldn't accept the results and is running a write-in campaign. I think that her running on, not necessarily defund the police, but a lot of the themes she was running on in the primary is why she upset him. But also, this is the tale of he, like Joe Crowley, just completely took it for granted and didn't even campaign. So, I do think progressives, on one hand, you're going to have to run a different kind of campaign to win a primary, and that is bold progressive. But typically in a city like this, if you won the primary, that's it. You've automatically won the general election.
Jordan, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And next, we'll tell you what's on our radar. Stay around for that.